All right, we now welcome onto the podcast, Kyle Trewyn. Kyle, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Excited to be with you.
So I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I like doing research. I like looking at research studies, and I saw that you did your thesis for your master's of education in leadership and catchers. Take me through that because I'm very curious. I read a good amount of it. What was that process like doing your thesis on leadership and catchers?
Wow, that takes me back. Yeah, I did. I did my leadership or my thesis on leadership in the catching position through the University of Minnesota. Um, I had just finished playing then the fall before. I just kind of was getting into coaching. Was a catcher myself, and uh, was really and still am really fascinated with the position on what makes good catchers and outside of the physical tools, especially in a day and age now where every showcase or every game you go to, it seems like the kid can throw the ball down to second base in under 2 seconds. And they're all taught how to receive and block and do all those things well. And I felt like the intangible there was just the leadership qualities that catchers need. You watch right now, for example, the big league playoffs, and any of them that are there, they all have a catcher, and most of the times that catcher is the guy who's sort of commanding the field and the field general, so to speak. And so I dove into that. Uh, found some interesting stuff, and nothing earth shattering or anything like that, but it was definitely an interesting topic to cover. But yeah, that's been a while. I mean, shoot, that's 10 years ago now. So
Yeah, 2013.
yeah, that's right.
Um, I think when I was reading it, one of the things that you had said is when you were, you had just started coaching when you wrote that, and one of the things that you had observed was either catchers. I believe you said something to the fact of either catchers like tried to be leaders and like weren't necessarily like it was coming across, or they weren't very outspoken. Like, what are you looking for when you're recruiting a catcher, like from a leadership standpoint, not just from based upon that study that you did, but just all your years as a recruiting coordinator too?
Yeah, a good question. It's tough to put your finger on it. Obviously, you look for physical tools, and I think I discussed that a little bit in there in the thesis as well. Um, but the word that always comes to mind for me is charisma. You're looking for a catcher who can command the field and has the respect of his teammates, but sort of has that innate ability to be able to hold his teammates accountable. It is the one position on the field that I feel like can really hold both the pitchers and the position players accountable because they dabble in a little bit of both. Um, so being able to hold those guys accountable and sort of direct the ship, so to speak, but at the same time be able to go back an hour later after they've gotten on someone and still have a respect, a rapport, and a relationship with them. It's hard to find in the recruiting process. It's even harder to describe. I think it's just one of those things you sort of see as they play, and then you get to know them on the phone. You do your homework on them a little bit with their coaches, whether it's a high school coach or a travel coach, or could be a junior college coach as well. And so, sort of developing that relationship with them gives you a little bit of insight on, what their personality is. But I mean, it kind of goes without saying the best teams I've been around and have had a catcher that has that charisma to be able to demand respect at the same time, but also be able to kind of be one of the boys, so to speak.
Normally, are you playing catchers in your past who are usually upperclassmen and have some experience? Like, is it really hard for a freshman to come in and get that role just based upon everything you just said?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, yes, it is. In my time at Bradley, we did have a really good catcher who walked in as a freshman and caught all 4 years, and really special kid, really physically advanced for a freshman, and that's why he got on the field so early. Um, you know, in a perfect world, that catcher is sort of an extension of the coaching staff, and so he's been around the coaches, the system that's in place. Uh, and you kind of hope that it's an upperclassman. so that he's had some experience. But I've seen it both ways.
This is your first year up at Miami, Ohio,
Mhm.
which we were talking before we started recording. For those listening, this is, it's obviously in Ohio, it's in Oxford, Ohio, and it's in the MAC conference. It's one of the hidden gems, I think, in terms of just facilities, campus, in college baseball. It's just a beautiful place. But since this is your guys' first year there, like what, you've been at Bradley for several years before that. I'm sure it was like a well-oiled machine. Now this is your guys' first year at a brand new program. Like, what are some things that you're having to start over with? Like, is there anything that maybe you just kind of took for granted because you were at Bradley for so many years and it was running smoothly, and now you're like, man, we have to start over with X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest thing has been in the recruiting side of stuff. Brian Smiley, our head coach, and I talk about all the time that he knew where and how to get guys to go to Indiana State when he was there for 14 or 15 years. And I felt like in my time at Bradley, I had a good grasp on where I could target guys and who I could go get them from to come to Bradley. So finding your niche, I think, has been the biggest thing. Miami is a hidden gem, like you said. And so we feel like if we can get the guys to campus to see the place and see Oxford, which is just an awesome, awesome college town, we feel like we've got a really good shot. But on top of that, not even athletically speaking, the university is awesome. It's very strong academically. It is one of the original public Ivy League schools. So they're going to get a really good degree. So a lot of our time this summer and this fall has been spent on, sort of figuring out which guys we need to be targeting, and how we need to be going after them and figuring out what to sell to them. Right. I mean, that's what recruiting is you've got to be able to sell a vision and sell what it is that you're going to stand for. And so that's kind of what we've been at for the most part. The other side of it too is that vision is huge. Brand new staff. We haven't been here. You don't necessarily want to come in and talk about the programs you've been at in the past and things that have worked there. You want to talk about what's going to happen here. And so that's been something that we've also had to focus in on. Just, hey, we're going to develop you. We're going to help you get where you want to go, and we're going to try to win as many games as we possibly can along the way. And Coach Smiley's track record says that. Coach Scully's track record says that. And so we feel like we're in a good place with that. The other thing you take for granted, and it's something kind of silly, is just you don't know where anything is on campus. When you've been at a place for a decade or whatever it is, you know exactly who to go to for everything, whatever it might be. If it's turning in receipts when you're done on a recruiting trip, or it's talking to somebody about academics with your student athletes, sort of getting acquainted with all the people on a new campus is something you definitely take for granted.
What's your vision for the program? You mentioned, like, when you're talking to recruits, you're selling them on the vision for the program, vision maybe even for them. Like, what is your vision for the program?
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe that is you got to kind of go into our background a little bit. So Coach Smiley was a college baseball player himself, did not play professionally. I was the same way. Coach Scully was the same way. The three of us, and it kind of goes without saying, we're in the business of trying to win college baseball games. That's a different game than the professional game, right? I mean, it's not always about the home run and the strikeout. We've got to find different ways to do different things, and we like to sell that we're going to do it as a team. We're going to bring in guys that fit into a system of team offense, of team defense, and of just kind of old school hard work, because that's what the three of us are. I was a Division II player myself. The other two guys both played junior college baseball before they went on to Division I, and I think everybody out there who's listening knows that junior college is a grind, and so can the D2 level be a grind, just because you don't have all the bells and whistles that you do in Division I. So our vision is to try to sell the team concept, and that we're going to do it not in a fancy way. We're going to do it by working smart and working hard. there's no reason why this place shouldn't be successful. That's what we really believe and what we really feel and what we try to sell. The MAC is a good league. It's a fun league to play in from what we've been told. And our facilities and our resources and just people on campus here supporting us, we feel like we should be able to get this thing rolling in the right direction.
Do you have, when you're out recruiting, like a bias towards a certain type of player? And let me give you an example. I was talking with a buddy of mine recently, and we were talking about a certain player, and he was a left-handed hitter. And my buddy goes, if this kid was a right-handed hitter, nobody would care. But because he's a left-handed, and it's been something that's been like I've been realizing lately, is like there's an obsession, it seems, with left-handed hitters. And I'm not saying, I know this is the first time we've talked, I'm not saying that about you, but I'm saying, is there anything like that maybe you have, or I'm just trying to figure out like why the left-handed hitter thing, but is there any bias that you have when you're out recruiting where it's like, maybe I need to take a step back? Is this something that, that I have a bias towards, or like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of the left-handed hitter thing. I love left-handed hitters, big, athletic built left-handed hitters. If we could have 9 of them on the field at every position, I would love it. And everyone always asks why, and it's simply because the right-handed slider or the right-handed breaking ball is just such a tough pitch to hit. And standing down there in the third base box as the hitting coach, you get sick of watching right-handers flail at that slider. And so rather than, hey, maybe I need to coach them up a little bit better, you say, you know what, let's make our job easier and just go get a bunch of left-handed hitters. So I'm definitely biased towards that. I do like, bigger physical guys. I just think that over the course of a college season, being 56 games, the body does break down. And so when you have a guy who's a little bit more physical, that body holds up better. But at the same time, the little, kind of pest or gnat, so to speak, that can run and bunt and do some different things is also a huge piece to the offense. So you've got to make sure you have balance. You don't want to just recruit a bunch of linebackers as much as I'd love to be out there and play guerrilla ball all day long. Coach Smiley reminds me of it all the time. Like, we're playing in the north here, and there's going to be days where it's 30 degrees and the wind's blowing in. And so you've got to find multiple ways to win and, be a balanced offense. But yeah, definitely biased towards the left-handed hitter for sure.
So I was speaking about you, even though I didn't know it.
Okay. You definitely were.
I know everybody loves, just because they can measure it. I think, parents who listen to this, and maybe even like coaches too, like everybody loves something they can measure, like metrics. And earlier you had talked about catching, where it's like, man, I can't always put my finger on exactly what it is. It's more of a gut feeling more than anything, which I think a lot of times that can be the case in scouting. But are there certain like metrics from like even something that people don't talk a lot about, like the home to first time or things like that you look at, or does it need to be just in a certain range for you to be like, okay, it's good enough? Or is there anything like that, or is it still mainly just the gut feel when it comes to physical tools?
Yeah, both to answer your question. The way I look at it, and I know our staff does too, is we try to kind of break it down by position as far as physical tools go. I think anybody who tells you that they don't look at any of the metrics is probably lying to you. We all have a PBR account. Most guys will have a perfect game account as well. And we hear about a player, or we get a recommendation. That's one of the first things we're going to do is go and look and see, okay, what does that 60 times say? How hard is he throwing the ball across the infield? Is he hitting it hard? Exit velo. That stuff definitely is helpful, but it's not the end all be all. And so I think that the metrics are a way for a prospect or a player to get our attention. But then we're going to go out and watch them play and see if they can play the game and have some baseball IQ and what they're like as a teammate, and are they coachable? A number of different things. So yes, the metrics matter. We don't want to recruit a center fielder, for example, who's running a 7.5 in the 60. He's got to be someone who can run a little bit and can cover some ground. You probably don't want to recruit a catcher who can't catch the ball. And so there are some things that, we use the metrics for. but it isn't everything.
Do you look at pop times for any of these showcase events?
Sure. I do. I think that a lot of them are cheated, but yes, I definitely do. The reason I say that is I don't even know what it is this year, but the big league average pop time is somewhere right around 2 flat every year, maybe a little bit lower than that. And you end up with a kid, just a random high schooler who, according to one of the websites or his NCSA profile or whatever it might be, says 1.79. And so you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, we will look at that a little bit.
One of the things that I like looking at if I'm going to watch a hitter play or just watch it on TV is I always like watching how they take a pitch. I think you can see a lot about a hitter, how they take a pitch. When you're out watching hitters, what are some of the things that maybe like you're looking at specifically? Because I feel like everybody maybe it's the same thing for you, maybe it's a little bit different, but what are some things that kind of you're specifically looking for?
Left-handed. No. The biggest thing for me that I'm looking at right away is the bat speed. It's just something that it's very hard to teach. It can be developed to an extent. But if a guy has a fast bat, he's got a chance because it really is a simple game and a simple concept of the faster his bat is, the later he has to swing or make a swing decision on a pitch, and it's going to allow him to see the ball longer and make a better decision on whether that is a hittable pitch. The velocities in today's game are only going up. It seems like, I can remember my first year in Division I in 2013 as the volunteer assistant at Bradley. You'd see a Friday night guy who was 88 to 92. They'd probably have a closer who was somewhere in that range. And that was really about as hard as it got. There obviously were outliers and things like that, but nowadays it seems like everybody is at that velocity at a minimum. And so I think that bat speed is the biggest tool for me when I go out and watch. Can the guy find the barrel? I mean, that's the biggest thing. I'm a huge believer in if a guy can hit and it isn't, quote unquote, mechanically sound or the right way, let him hit. I don't care. Hitting to me is the hardest thing to do in all of sports. And I really don't even think there's a close second. And so if somebody is hitting and they're out of sequence or, they do something that has been taught to you that is an absolute no, but yet they're still finding the barrel, I'm probably not going to touch that guy too much. And we're going to start trying to establish an approach or a plan each time that he steps in the box. But for me, yeah, the bat speed's huge. Does he find the barrel is another big thing. And I'm also looking at how much he swings and misses. Pitching doesn't get any easier as you go up, the college level, the professional level, whatever it may be. It's only going to get more difficult. So if you have a guy who's striking out a ton in high school, he better have a bunch of pop in that bat that is going to, match the strikeout totals. And so we're trying to recruit guys who you can barrel up the baseball and we can, maybe build a bigger engine with them, so to speak. Those guys who are maybe contact type hitters in high school, but they have a body that can fill out to be what would project to be a power guy. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, there's some guys out there who it seems like they have the engine, they have that bat speed, and then there's others where it's like, man, like maybe in a couple years he could have it. Is that where you feel like maybe you guys would go to a JUCO player who's a little bit more physically put together and come in and play right away? Like, do you see with the way the transfer portal is going now and everything else that you're going to see more and more players who maybe you'll end up taking later on? Maybe not that specific player, but other players who go to the portal versus going to play at a Division I and now they're not good enough as maybe they were 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the portal it's obviously changed a lot of things. I think it's slowed down high school recruiting for one. Guys can now go and look up proven numbers on players who have played at other Division I's or Division II's or Division III's or whatever it is, and they have numbers to back them up versus looking at a high school kid, trying to project him, dream on him a little bit, develop him, and get him where he needs to be. It's sad to say, but those days aren't completely done. There's still obviously going to be high school players recruited, and there's still going to be high school players who are really successful and do a good job. But it's about winning and winning now at a lot of places. And so, with it being a coach's livelihood, he's got to make a decision. Do I take the projectable high school guy, or do I go the junior college route or the transfer portal route, and look for something that can help us right away? I personally think you need to have a little bit of both. We got to have a balance of both. When I was at Bradley, we were far more high school based because it's a really good academic institution, and it was kind of difficult to get transfers in. So we had to do it, sort of the older way, where you went out and got a high school player and developed them. And, you hope every 3 or 4 years you've got a bunch of guys who have been around for a while and you can go make a run. I think at Miami, we're going to be a little bit more of a balance with the junior college player, the high school guy, and, maybe adding a portal or guy here or two late.
One of the things that I had heard recently about, or not about, but from another college coach, was on the portal. And he said if he was a high school kid, he thinks that a lot of high school kids are a panic, and then they end up, just wanting to commit somewhere. He said, and then again, correct me, I'm curious to hear your take on this. He said that, usually at the end of the year, especially if you're in a Division I program, and obviously it's a little bit different if you're the Vanderbilts or at that level, but at the end of the year, a lot of guys are going to go in the portal, and coaches are going to scramble to try to fill those spots, and maybe they wouldn't expect to lose some certain players. And he said, if I would rather, this was this coach saying, he's like, I would rather go out and take a high school kid, because he coaches at a Division I mid-major. I'd rather go and take out a high school kid than I would go and take another kid out of the portal who just sat the bench at another Division I, because I can't go and get one of the top Division I players who are at a mid-major, because they're going to a Power 5. And so his thought was like, just be patient, bet on yourself, continue to play out if you don't get anything you want, and there'll probably be a Division I, if that's what you want, come June, because they're going to lose out on guys who maybe they didn't think they were going to lose out on, because they ended up losing them to the portal. A, did what I say make any sense at all? And then B, do you agree with that?
Yeah. A, yes, it made sense. B, I definitely think there's some truth to that. One of the biggest things now, everyone has always talked about recruiting being the lifeblood. Retention is going to become a bigger thing now in college baseball programs because of the portal. I think that, it's different for each individual program. I think you've kind of hinted at that with some bigger name programs and that sort of thing. They're going to be able to go and target guys who are in the portal who have numbers and things like that. I also think it just sort of depends on what you're returning and what you're looking for. If you can afford to bring in a high school center fielder late and give him a year or two to develop, because you have a guy there that is going to be good, then absolutely, I would take the high school guy. But if you have a need where you need to fill right away, where that guy has to walk in and play, probably going to lean more towards the transfer. So I see both sides of it, but I definitely understand where that coach was coming from.
If you had a son right now in high school, let's just say maybe he's a freshman or sophomore, junior, he wants to get recruited, he wants to play college baseball, how would you go about it? And let's just say, like, Kyle, like, you're not a college coach, you don't have the connections you have, or the knowledge you have. Like, would you go to camp to get him seen? Like, how would you navigate that?
No, it's good you asked that, because when I was growing up, it was a completely different scene. There wasn't really travel baseball too much yet. There were a few teams here and there. The whole showcase setting, perfect game, prep baseball report, all of that stuff, that wasn't really a thing. That wasn't around. And so what you did is you just played. You played a ton. I can remember going to camps a lot in the winter, not only to be seen, but to learn, and to try to get better. You hear all the quote unquote old school guys talk about it. They're not completely wrong at all when they say, what happened to 10 buddies just going out and playing on a sand lot? So the way that I would go about it is make sure, number one, that he's having fun, that he's enjoying it, uh, because it's baseball. It's supposed to be a fun game. And I think sometimes it becomes too much of a business way too early for some high school kids and for parents and all those involved in the recruiting process. Make sure he's having fun. Make sure he's playing enough, because playing is going to make him better. It is just going to make him better. And then, yeah, I think the best way to target it, honestly, would be to go to some camps. Find some schools that you're interested in. Maybe they have your major, or it's a place you really want to go. You like the coaching staff, you like the campus, you like the location, whatever it might be. Go and target some of those places and get in front of their staff. And then I do think that there's value to going to some of those showcases, right? To be able to have a profile online that a coach can quickly access and check out your metrics, your numbers, see videos of your swings or of you throwing a bullpen or whatever it might be. So that's the way I'd go about it.
You had mentioned before that, you guys, or you as a staff, that you guys are a little bit more patient in the recruiting process, where you see some coaches or it's like, man, they see a kid one time and then they offer him right away. And so it's pretty fast paced. How many times will you see a kid? Like how much time are you spending with a kid before you are extending an offer to him? Like, when you say you're a little bit more patient, what does that timeline look like compared to maybe somebody else?
Yeah, I think it's different for each player, each kid. There's going to be some that you can look at and right away, yeah, that guy's, he's ready. Let's go. Let's get him on the phone. Let's get him on campus. Let's get an offer in his hands, and hopefully he commits. There's going to be others that you need to see multiple times. It could be 2, could be 3, could be 4 times, whatever it is, and really see how their skill set or their game plays. When I say patient, I mean more so age wise. We're not going to be the group that is, really looking hard at freshmen in high school or sophomores in high school right now. We're going to be, at that 2025 class is what it would be right now, kind of looking there. Still doing some 24 stuff as well. And then obviously the transfers and different things like that. But again, I think I said this to you before we recorded. I'm completely fine with saying it's okay with me that I'm not very good at looking at a 15 or 16-year-old and telling you if he's going to be a good player when he's 21. So when we talk about going slower, that's sort of what I mean.
Okay. How often would you say, if you're watching a hitter, is there times when you see, like, you go back to what you just said, maybe you see him one time and you're like, you're all in, or usually is it a couple times, being that it is hitting, he could have had a really good game and it's like, man, let's see what he's really like. And then the second part is that, do you look at stats? Do you look at high school stats? Do you look at summer ball stats? Like, how much are you digging in from a statistics standpoint?
Yeah. Um, amount of time seeing a guy, very rarely do you see one swing or one at bat or maybe one game and say, yeah, that guy's got it. It does happen. But very rarely. You want to see them not only have a game where they succeed and they're turning around fastballs and they're able to, spit on a breaking ball or sit on one and hit it the other way or whatever it might be, but you also want to see maybe a game where they fail and see how they react to it. So typically we're going to see them multiple times. Very rarely do you have just a no doubter that you watch one at bat and you say, yeah, he's got it. Let's go get him. Statistically, it's tough. You don't want to read too much into it because the statistics are all relative to the competition level that they're playing. It is a red flag, if I'm being honest. If you look and you say, man, I think that guy can really hit, and then you look up and he hit 200 for his high school team. Maybe he had a really good day, or your eyes were lying to you, or whatever it is. So you look into him a little bit. I think you look into him a little bit more with a junior college transfer or a transfer portal guy, where that they're facing similar level of competition. And so that's when the statistics come into play a little bit. I have been on the other side of it, where you recruit a guy and you think he's a no doubter, and you look up in his senior year, he hits 270. You're like, uh-oh, what did I do? I messed up here. So the statistics, they carry a little bit of weight, but not a ton.
Let's talk a little bit about, I know you're a hitting coach and,
Mhm.
you work with a lot of the hitters. Like what's kind of, what's a typical day like usually for hitters at Miami, Ohio that, and then like during the fall? 'Cause that's when, you're really able to get your hands on and work with guys. Like what are some of the things that maybe like you believe in that you're starting to emphasize and implement, being that is the first year, and maybe these guys still don't, they're starting to grasp what you want, but what are you emphasizing for the program in terms from like a hitting offensive philosophy?
Yeah. So typical day, most of the time, unless it's a scrimmage day for us, we're probably going to have guys come in throughout the day in groups and hit in our indoor facility. We have a really nice indoor facility with a couple of cages, and I've found that when we're trying to break down the swing or really get guys sort of to where you want them to be from a mechanical standpoint and an approach standpoint, it's often better to do it in smaller groups. So we're usually going to do it like that. And then the team practice aspect in the afternoon will be more with team defense or team offense type stuff, where we're working more on, hey, how we're going to do this all together versus your individual swing. For me, again, I go back to it. Hitting is so hard to do. And so I think that it's got to be as simple as possible. You know, i- it's so hard to do. And yet we as coaches are so guilty sometimes of making it really complex. And so my big things that I'm trying to instill and that I think I'll take with me to the grave are, getting to a good hitting position on time over and over and over again. I'm a firm believer that the guys that are able to do that are more than likely going to be your most successful hitters. Um, it's just consistency, and so we do a lot of drill work that works on that, getting to a good hitting position, messing with their timing, trying to get them to be off time, but then have to get back being on time. And we're going to do that a lot. I think that like everything in this world, that there's two different ways of doing things or two different sides to every story. Um, the old school way of hitting is good. It's got good stuff. There's good concepts to it. There's a reason it worked. There's a reason that guys in the 60s and 70s and 80s had really high batting averages. They're not wrong. And then some of the newer age stuff of, hey, if you want to hit more doubles and you want to hit more home runs, we should probably try to hit the ball in the air a little bit more. That's also good. And the fact that the two sides go at each other and say that the other one's wrong is crazy to me, because the answer is right there in the middle. I think you have to be able to do both. And so that's kind of what my philosophy is we're going to be able to hit the power ground ball, so to speak, to the right side if you're a right-handed hitter, to the opposite side. But then I also want guys to be able to turn and hit a pitch 400 feet to the pull side, high and far. And I think that if you want to be successful in the college game, you've got to be able to do all of those things. And so that philosophy there is just sort of what we're trying to integrate here this fall. It has been awesome. The players that we have here, they're great. They're really hungry for knowledge. They want to know. They love to hit. So it's been a great group to be around and kind of introduce the philosophy to them.
Do you believe in situational hitting?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Especially in the college game, and that's something we work on a ton. We do it every day at team practice. I would go as far as to say, if you can't situationally hit, it's going to be really tough for you to be in the lineup. And I know that about our head coach as well. He would say the same thing. Are there certain guys that project to be your home run guys and you want them to let it rip every time? Yeah, there are. And you're gonna let that guy do his thing maybe a little bit more than some others. But at the same time, that guy, if he steps up and you've got a runner on third and less than two outs, we don't need a strikeout right there, man. We need a situation where you can hit a ground ball to second base or you can hit a fly ball to center field and get that running. So yeah, situational hitting for me is huge.
Do you think emphasizing situational hitting to hitters helps them improve their in-game performance in those situations?
Yes, absolutely. I also think it just helps improve their swing as well. I think that when you talk about the situations, okay, let's talk about, a guy hits a leadoff double. What do we want to do? We want to get him over. Maybe we don't want to bunt right there. So we're looking for a right-handed hitter in that situation to hit a ball to the right side of the field to advance the guy over. So right there, we're looking for something out over the plate that we can hit low and hard. And that's, getting the bat in the zone early and staying through it for a long time. And so it helps them right there with that. And then we start talking about getting them in. Well, now we've got to look for something that we can hopefully elevate a little bit. So now we've got to talk about trying to get the ball up in the air. And so, guys want to talk about launch angle. They want to talk about all this different stuff. Well, right there, just in a matter of two swings, we've now forced you to hit from hit a ground ball at a 0, I guess, and then you've forced them to hit a fly ball at a 40-degree launch angle. The other one too, a situation can be, hey, we need a base hit right here, and that often gets overlooked. Of like, hey, can you hit a line drive to the outfield grass? And that's somewhere in the middle of the power ground ball on the get them over, or the fly ball on the get them in. And so I think that practicing it helps for sure. I think making it a point of emphasis is big. And so a lot of the drills we'll do, a lot of the things we'll talk about is, hey, I want to be able to see you on one swing, hit a hard low line drive or hard ground ball the opposite way, hit one back in the middle of the field, gap to gap on a line. And then I want to see you be able to hit a double or a home run to your pull side gap on the third swing. If guys can do that, I think that their bat path is usually in a pretty good spot. I think that their timing is usually in a pretty good spot. And it shows me that they have the ability to change their approach, not only at bat to at bat or game to game, but pitch to pitch. And the best hitters at whatever level of baseball it is are able to do that.
Have you been watching and been able to watch any of the playoffs so far?
I have. I've been able to watch some. Obviously, long, busy days here at the office and at the field and working with guys. And then at home, I do have 3 young daughters and a wife. So I've got to put on the dad and the husband hat a lot at night. But playoff baseball is so fun to watch because it's the best baseball players in the world competing at their highest level. I never played at that level, but I would imagine over the course of 162 games, there's got to be some stuff that you maybe don't go at quite as hard. But when you're trying to win every single game like they are in the playoffs, it's more like the college game. You now see these hitters who are used to launching balls, trying to throughout the course of a season. You see them now cutting down and trying to go the other way with 2 strikes. You see more bunts, you see more hit and runs, you see more situational baseball.
Yeah, I think that's a great point where it's, you mentioned situational hitting where we just talked about, and it's now you're seeing that in the playoffs because it's solely about winning. And so you kind of connect the two. It's like, yeah, that's the biggest difference, right? If maybe the regular season it's not that it's not about winning per se, but the players, I think, let's be honest, they're trying to get some stats up and
they're playing for money.
Yeah,
they are. And you know what, if I was one of them, I'd be doing the same thing. If somebody said, hey, if you can go out and hit 30 and drive in 100, we're going to give you, X amount of dollars, I'd probably be trying to do the same thing. But I do tell our players that, like, hey, watch the game right now, because this is the most talented guys in the world playing the game like we want you to, right? Like, you look and you watch. I remember a few years it just hitting me in the face that watching Aaron Judge with 2 strikes, and he's hitting line drive singles over the second baseman's head. He's hitting ground balls through the 4-hole, completely changing his approach from what it looked like, maybe during the season. And so it's great to watch.
When it comes to game planning, like that's one of the things that I love studying and I love doing is game planning, helping players build out their plan for the game depending on the that day's pitcher. You see that in the playoffs. You see that with the Texas Rangers when they were facing the Orioles of like, hey, we're trying to get on top. A ground ball is going to be a win against this guy versus a fly ball because of that vertical break he has.
Yeah.
What are some things that you do when game planning? Obviously maybe it's a Friday night guy. Maybe it's a little bit different approach than a midweek guy, and maybe time is a factor within that too, because you don't have all day like they do in professional baseball. But Is there a process or a system that you have found that works with guys and helping them game plan?
Yeah, so in recent years, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been really lucky. This is when I was at Bradley. We're going to have the same thing here at Miami, and most schools across the country have it as well. But Synergy has completely changed that. The video software, for those out there that maybe don't know what it is, but it's a great tool not only for player development, but it's even better for for game planning. And so what it is, you've got a camera up in center field. A lot of times you've got a camera behind the plate. You film the whole game, you send it into this company called Synergy, and they cut it up into individual pitches. And you can go through and put on filters. So let's say I wanted to see, a pitcher on Friday night, what he did last weekend. I can go back and type his name in and look at every pitch that he threw. I can break it down and say, hey, I want to see every breaking ball he threw to a right-handed hitter, in the sixth inning of last night. And it can go that far, down that rabbit hole. And so I spend a lot of time on there. I'm going to go through all three starters for sure. I'm likely going to go through the closer, and maybe another key bullpen arm. I'm going to look at, what they try to do as a pitching staff. You're also going to contact guys who have played that team previously in the year. We're all sort of a fraternity in coaching. And so many of us know each other and are good friends, and we can call and say, hey, we've got, this school this weekend. What do you got on them? And they can help you out. I'm going to look specifically at what pitches he's throwing and what counts and in what situations. Is it more traditional where when the hitter's ahead he's going to be 75 or 80% fastball, or is he going to be a guy who throws backwards, or is it a guy that mixes, and just every count is sort of a guess. Hopefully we can get all that information together for the players. We'll put it into a scouting report that'll be hung up in the dugout, for both the opposing team's pitchers and the opposing team's hitters. And then me specifically, I'm going to meet with all of our hitters on game day, either before BP or after BP, and go through the starting pitcher for that day and show them video of what the guy looks like when he throws his slider, his fastball, his changeup, so they can get an idea of what the slot is. I'm going to take them through his breakdowns on, hey, he's 1-0 count. He's 65% fastball. So, hey, we better be on time for the fastball like we always should be, but understand he may flip you in a breaking ball in that count. See it up, that kind of stuff. So that part of it is a lot of fun to me. You really feel like as a coach there that you can impact the game a little bit. And it's fun to see a game plan play out and be successful.
Awesome. Kyle, I appreciate you coming on today, man. It's been a ton of fun. I'm going to put your thesis in the show notes if anybody wants to read it.
All right.
But I appreciate it, man. Best of luck this year, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.